allowing Franklin to supercharge a primitive courier system connecting the 13 fragmented colonies into an efficiency-driven organization that sped deliveries between Philadelphia and New York City to a mere 24 hours. Franklin's travels along the post roads of colonial America would inspire his revolutionary vision for how a new nation could thrive independently of Britain. But not even Franklin could imagine the pivotal role his postal service would bring to the American Revolution. By the early 1770s, Franklin's fellow patriots had organized underground communication networks, the Committees of Correspondence, followed by the Constitutional Post, that allowed the Founding Fathers to talk treason behind the backs of their British rulers. In 1775, 3 months after the battles of Lexington and Concord, and well before the Declaration of Independence was even signed, the Continental Congress turned the Constitutional Post into the Post Office of the United States, whose operations became the first, and for many average Americans, the most significant function of the newly formed government. James Madison and other Founding Fathers understood how the Post could support a fledgling democracy, delivering inexpensive newspapers and political pamphlets that shed light on British tax bills designed to pay back Britain after her defense of the colonies during the French and Indian Wars. Put simply, Franklin's efficient management of the world's first social media platform allowed like-minded Americans to join forces in their common desire for independence. And there you have it. Franklin's Postal Service spawns an American Revolution. Today on the Daily Dose. If you like learning something new every day, subscribe to the Daily Dose on YouTube or sign up for emails at dailydosenow.com. Today on the Daily Dose, CRISPR Explained. CRISPR is a new technology for changing the sequence of DNA in cells in a precise manner, which allows scientists to correct mutations that might otherwise cause diseases, allowing scientists to do a number of things that they were incapable of doing before. For example, they can study how diseases work by having two populations that are closely related to each other. CRISPR can then delineate how diseases spread from one population to the other. Scientists can now modify bacteria and algae to produce useful byproducts such as medicines or biofuels that work much like microscopic factories. CRISPR can modify foods to make seed stock disease or pest resistant in a way that is much more accurate and precise than previous methods of DNA manipulation. The way CRISPR works is by the action of a protein called Cas9 that functions like a molecular scalpel on DNA. The CRISPR-Cas9 system has an amazing ability to recognize a particular DNA sequence in a cell that might be malfunctioning, and then disable it by cutting or editing the DNA. For Cas9 to find the malfunctioning DNA sequence, scientists attach it to an RNA sequence that matches the DNA sequence they want to edit. Then they inject this RNA-Cas9 combination into the affected cell. It then hunts down the mutant DNA and uses a chemical reaction to cut the strand right at the spot where it's malfunctioning. After that, they can sometimes insert the correct version of the gene for the cell to work properly again. And there you have it, CRISPR Explained, today on the Daily Dose. Today on the Daily Dose, Lucky Lindy, the first man to cross the pond. Born in Detroit in 1902, Charles Lindbergh took up flying at the tender age of 20. A year later, he bought a surplus World War I Curtiss Jenny biplane and toured the country as a barnstorming stunt pilot. In 1924, he enrolled in the Army Air Service Flying School in Texas and graduated at the top of his class. He became an airmail pilot in 1926 and pioneered the route between St. Louis and Chicago. In 1926, French entrepreneur Raymond Ortegue reoffered a prize of $25,000 to the first aviator or aviators to fly nonstop across the Atlantic from New York to Paris, a flight of some 3,600 miles over open water. In response, Lindbergh convinced the St. Louis Chamber of Commerce to front the cost of the flight, setting a budget of $15,000 in support of Lindbergh's objective. Ryan Airlines Corporation of San Diego volunteered to build the Spirit of St. Louis, which proved to be little more than a single-engine gas tank with wings. The main fuel tank was placed in front of the cockpit, which cut off Lindbergh's forward vision other than the addition of a periscope. To cut down on weight, all non-essential instruments were removed, including the radio, gas gauges, night flying lights, navigation equipment, and a parachute. Bad weather delayed Lindbergh's transatlantic attempt for nearly a week, but on May 20th, 1927, the Spirit of St. Louis struggled to lift off from the muddy grass runway at Roosevelt Field, so overloaded with fuel that the plane barely cleared the telephone wires at the end of the runway. On May 21st, halfway across the pond, Lindbergh entered a fog bank as he struggled to stay awake, holding his eyelids open with his fingers. He later confessed that he hallucinated about ghosts passing through the cockpit. After 24 hours of flying, he spotted fishing boats and knew he was close to land. He called down to them which way to Ireland. When he landed at Le Bourget Aerodrome in Paris, Charles Lindbergh became an international celebrity, strengthening the notion that one man with the right amount of daring and ingenuity could have an enormous impact on the world. President Calvin Coolidge dispatched a warship to bring the hero home. Upon his arrival in New York, Lucky Lindy was given a ticker-tape parade before being presented with the Congressional Medal of Honor. And there you have it, Lucky Lindy, today on the Daily Dose. Today on the Daily Dose, Muhammad Ali. Born Cassius Clay on January 17, 1942, Muhammad Ali was an American professional boxer, activist, and philanthropist. Nicknamed the Greatest, he was widely regarded as one of the most significant and celebrated sports figures of the 20th century, and one of the greatest boxers of all time. Born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, Ali began training as an amateur boxer at the tender age of 12. By the time he was 18, he won a gold medal in the light heavyweight division at the 1960 Summer Olympics, turning pro later that year. In 1964, 22-year-old Ali upset the 7-1 favorite Sonny Liston in a fight that stunned the boxing world. Just barely qualifying for the heavyweight division, Ali announced himself to the world as a first-rate trash talker